Well, welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. I'm so glad you're with us on what I consider a historic day in space history that our nonprofit represents, the 55th landing on the moon by Apollo 11. Of course, it's not the 55th. 55 years ago, this happened as Marty Winkel, who worked on this lunar module that's behind me here, that's the real deal out at Kennedy Space Center. Could have been on the moon, but for reasons we're going to talk about, wasn't. And Marty's going to chime in a little bit as he was a lead electrical engineer, one of the youngest surviving members of the cherished group of Grumman employees, about 1,200 of you, right, Marty, that were on the Space Coast, called the Grummies, from Long Island, New York, where Beth Page, the headquarters, is. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Going to take you a perspective of the lunar module that you rarely see, taking the skin off of it. And Marty will be talking as I can coax as much out of him as possible, doing a tour of this lunar module 9 that's out at Kennedy Space Center of Saturn Building Center there. So beautiful, beautiful day today in here, Florida, but it's even made better that on my work desk I've been listening to the Apollo 11 astronauts go into orbit around the moon. 55 years ago, around 1:15 is when the first orbit was. They're on the second orbit. Marty, we've been enjoying looking at a live movie that they did, not live TV that they broadcast to the American public 55 years ago. And of course, I am a lunatic when it comes to astronomy and the moon. I love the moon. I sketch the moon. I've photographed the moon all my life. And when I actually could see close up some of these craters that I've seen in my telescope over and over as a teenage boy in Findlay, Ohio, it was just amazing to see the certain craters up close that, you've never seen live like that. And I'm going to highlight two of them that the astronauts talk about. I pulled off some comments that they made orbiting the moon. And basically, Mike Collins said it all when there's just hardly any words of vocabulary to describe what I'm seeing. And so though it looked like plaster of Paris, grayish, there was also brown areas and golden areas in the lunar surface there. So strap on some Apollo 11 today. And as you're thinking about it there, Dave Stange, how big was this arena that the Apollo 11 moonwalk on Saturday night? It was actually a Sunday night, July 20th, at about 11 o'clock at night it started. How big would that area be in your mind's eye? Think about that, and I'm going to show you exactly how big the area was, arena style, that Apollo 11 operated in. What they're putting out the science package, and then the furthest was when Neil went over to a crater and tossed something significant to his life in that crater. So let me get a sip of some good coffee here. Thanks to Barry Smith. Thank you for my Constellation cup there that lights up. The Constellation's heated. Ah, delicious. Been a wonderful moon landing week here at the American Space Museum, except for the fact that we are praying for our executive director, Karan Conklin, and she went back in the hospital for a little stint and is supposedly coming home today, battling lung cancer and a serious situation that we want everyone to keep their thoughts and prayers into Karan, her family, and her husband, Mark. We certainly do thank Bert Dick and Julian Leake, two influencers on the Space Coast that have never met each other before. Bert, part of the National Space Society, membership director, a great guy that's known throughout the world, actually, for his enthusiasm and support of the space through the National Space Society and their quarterly magazine Ad Astra. And of course, Julian Leake. They were on together yesterday. You want to see that? Julian Leake's been a photographer over 50 years on the Space Coast, a shutterbug like me, and we shared his photography and Bert's wonderful engineering talk on the engineers who saved the Apollo 11 landing. So you want to go back and watch that? It was a great time that we had, and we'll have them both back on. Burke's coming on in August on a regular monthly basis. And we'll get Julian in here by himself. He's quite an interesting character, isn't he, Marty? He's got a lot of great stories. He's a bold and brash photographer like you have to be. And his work is just pro ranked all the way. So check those guys out. And yes, I got to say, go to the movies. And that's my review. Fun and far-fetched in Hollywood critic style there. Marty, we didn't really talk about it too much. I think we were kind of saving that to get maybe some other people on to talk about it. But cue the mic. What's Marty got to say there?
Well, let's just inform everybody to try and watch the movie this week, or this weekend, so we can talk it next week, because we don't want to be the spoiler.
Yep, that's right. And Fun and Far-Fetched is my review of it. Of course, beautiful scenery there with Scarlett Johansson in it, and that, of course, Channing Tatum is a good eye candy for you ladies out there. Magic Mike, I think, was a movie that I haven't seen, that he was a male showman of some sort in that movie there. So it was cute and fun, but my God, they certainly had a lot of liberties with science, physics, as well as how things rolled on there. So it's some funny comments from the space legends that saw it. So we'll save those for later, but go check it out this weekend, staying cool in a theater somewhere. Well, here's your way to see the Apollo landing tomorrow. About 4 o'clock is when you want to tune in. The actual landing's about 4:20. Live, as if you were there 55 years ago. Whoever the people put this together years ago, they matched the actual conversations in the blue on the right-hand side there. You see the little blue at the bottom above my name. We can take my name off there. There you go. You see the bottom. That's Collins talking there at that exact moment. And this picture comes up the exact moment that Neil may have took that picture in the sequence on the Hasselblad camera. Movies come up periodically. That's why we were watching the live video feed that they did on the second orbit. They're actually going over their landing site, all right, for a full day to look at the things that are going on there. And so I pulled out a couple excerpts, but this is on Apollo Real Time. Just Google Apollo 11 Real Time. It'll take you right to it. You can go forwards, backwards on it. It's really amazing. Of course, you can watch it any time, any year. It's always there. And I think they do it for Apollo 13, and there's another Apollo they do that I've watched, but I forget. But of course, the whole thing is about mankind's greatest adventure. You can't imagine the excitement, the wonder, the awe of 55 years ago, being a 15 years old in Northwest Ohio, so far and remote from NASA, and everything you knew. You either got in the newspaper in the morning or the afternoon paper. It was the Findlay Courier was the morning paper. The Toledo Blade was the afternoon paper. And you had 3 TV stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and maybe luckily get a PBS station, which we did from Lima, Ohio. And that's where Neil Armstrong was born, in Wapakoneta, Ohio, about 90 miles south of where I grew up, and was born in Findlay, Ohio. So, but Marty, you were insulated. All of the Apollo workers really had no concept about, for example, that Light My Fire by the Doors was the #1 song in 1968. Right, Marty? You guys were lucky to even read newspapers, I understand, on there. Speak a little about the times that we were living in and how primitive communication was in the news.
I don't know if I can talk about all that, Mark. But we were, I guess you could say, isolated. We knew what we were doing, but I don't think we grasped it at the international level. We knew it was important. We knew we had a goal. But 55 years ago, I can't say that I really understood just what the world was thinking about what we were doing. To a lot of us, it was the job we had to get done, and we did it.
Good point. Yes, a lot of them were oblivious to the world attention of this thing and the interest it would garner. Some engineers and so forth were kind of miffed at the attention they got. They were doing a job, like Marty said, and this is the beautiful lunar module number 9 that we're going to talk about here in a little bit of a detail there that is so beautifully displayed out there at Kennedy Space Center. Okay, let's get to the going to the moon. There again, Apollo 11 real time. Catch up with it. They'll tell you when they're sleeping here later this evening, and then they wake up about I don't know 4 in the morning. It was a full 36 hours that they were up during the descent and landing and all that. So they're talking about an object that I've seen through the telescope many times, the crater Messier A and B. And see those 2 craters right there to the left, and the one on the right looks like it's got a little faint tail coming off of it. That's because something impacted the moon, 2 objects at once it looks like, and they were coming from the left or the right and spewed out this material. So Armstrong's saying Apollo 11 is getting its first view of the landing approach. At this time, we're going over the Tarantulus crater, and the pictures and maps brought back by Apollo 8 and 10 have given us very good preview of what to look at here. This is Neil Armstrong talking, his first pass over the landing site. Here it looks very much like the pictures, but like the difference between watching a real football game and one on TV. There's no substitute for actually being there. That's a cool analogy, I think, Marty. Yep. Armstrong saying it's like watching a football game on TV, except the difference is the real football game and being there. And Mission Control, Roger, we concur, and we certainly wish we could see it firsthand also. And then Armstrong says, as they're going, it took 2 hours to go around the moon. And why 2 hours? It takes 90 minutes to go around the Earth. Moon's smaller. Should take less time to go around, right? And I haven't said hi to Logan Cope, our intern here, who's scratching his head going, where are you going with that? Logan's our Eastern Florida State College intern doing a great job. With the object smaller, it has less gravity, and therefore there's less pull on your vehicle. So with less gravity, 1/6 gravity is fact on the surface, it does take slower to go around the moon than it does the much larger Earth. Armstrong says we're going over the Messier series of craters right at the time, looking vertically down on them. And we can see good-sized blocks in the bottom of the craters. I don't know what our altitude is now, but in any case, those are pretty good-sized blocks. This is looking through a telescope. See them right there in the middle there? There you go. And you see the little kind of like a comet's tail on A and B. Messier was an astronomer from France that put together 100 objects that didn't move in the sky that looked like faint fuzzy comets. So that's why it got that name. Yeah, right there's Messier A and B. And the squares where you can see them. And this is very near the landing site, okay? The landing site's a little bit below and to the left there. So it was exciting that Neil was looking at this, but not too exciting that he could see big-sized blocks in there, wondering what it would be like when he got over the area there. And there's another close-up picture they took of them. 2 very weird craters that have been photographed by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter up close, and we've seen them big blocks up close. And Mission Control told him when Neil said he didn't know what his altitude was. Of course, he could look at his panel and tell, but he was more transfixed on studying what he had to go over to land on. He was 120 miles up right then, and they got down as far as 60 miles in the orbiter. And then Neil says, I think we can make out color. The color really enhances our ability to discern craters and features when we see them. And then they talk about the low sun angle. There's no trace of brown. That's how we had brown with a higher sun angle, and now it's lower. So very interesting to hear what they talked about. They knew the craters by name, which is another set of knowledge that you got to pile on these astronauts. They're not only flying a moon ship, but they have to have some lunar geography well known and know these craters probably better than I did at the time. And along the difference between night and day is called the terminator. And that's what we're seeing right there. And Aldrin said it's a very fantastic view to see the Terminator as you look along the edge of it. I think you'll agree that some of these craters that you're seeing in the picture now are really accentuated by the lengthening of the shadows. And so those are some words from the astronauts 55 years ago. Of course, Buzz Aldrin's the only one alive at age 95. And I'm sure he is enjoying some things on social media. He was a Twitter monster, now called the X, and I haven't looked at Twitter much since it went to the X, so I'm sure he's got a comment there for those of you that enjoy that social media. It's all about landing on the moon, and on July 20th, which will be tomorrow, Saturday night at about 11 o'clock, that's when they're egressing out. About 11:30, these pictures were taken around midnight, right, Eastern Daylight Time, and what 3 little panels that were taken off the TV by a photographer. So when we see pictures of man on the moon on that morning paper of July 20th, okay, these pictures were actually taken by photographers who took these photographs off of the TV screen. Okay, because we didn't get the pictures back until they splashed down 3 days later, and then they were sent to Houston right away. And Tom Usiak's watching, and he had a photography lab that was a professional lab doing thousands of rolls of film a day. And boy, that would be a couple rolls of Hasselblad film that I would be a nervous wreck processing. And they did it through an automatic machine, not the shake and bake, so to speak, like a lot of us shutterbugs did with Tri-X film in a dark room. So just a little sideline there as I get wrapped up in photography. But what Buzz is doing here, Marty and Logan, is he's seesawing back and forth. He's trying to figure out how to walk. And he's like putting left foot down and then the right foot on the other side and back and forth. And they kind of thought that was the way to walk around the moon. Nope. By Apollo 14, Apollo 12 got it figured out. The bunny hop was the quickest way and keep their balance the best way. Because when you were seesawing back and forth, you had to look and make sure each leg was not going to land on a rock or a pebble or a hole, a crater hole that were all over the place. So they ended up doing a bunny hop with springing forward on both feet at the same time, which wreaked havoc on their ball joints. So the boots, when we go back to the moon, will be a Dutch shoe with the toes shaping upwards there, so that is a more comfortable way to do it. Shout out to our friend Chris Calley. His father, Paul Calley, made these sketches on the fly as the only artist allowed in the White Room when they were suited up July 16th. Our good friend Ronnie Wood was also in that room on there, and also a friend of ours. We're going to show some of their artwork of Ron Woods, Chris Calley, and Doug Forrest, who's watching. Doug, we'll highlight your pen and ink, not pen and ink, but your pen drawings of the Apollo astronauts that are so masterfully done. We'll highlight all of them over the weekend, folks, so that you can enjoy some artwork over the weekend. But Chris then portrayed his father, Paul Calley, in the movie First Man. And Chris was over in the right-hand corner there sketching in the same notepad that his dad used. So these are some sketches right there in the White Room that Paul Calley did 55 years ago that he later turned into masterpieces. And what's that? That's my hand on a piece of the moon. You can touch the moon at the Saturn V Center, and I'll bet most of you have done that. They've got a sliver of a moon that they kind of polish down, but actually I think it's polished down by so many people touching it. You got to go underneath a little slot, okay? So I would have to, you can't get that thing out of there. You got to go under like a little bank slot. Remember those little slots that the bank teller would have? And you hit hand under there to touch it there. So I just had to throw that in. So Grumman, one of the greatest emblems of any business. I love the Grumman logo there with the eagle flying, the star. The star and the eagle were part of it, of the Grumman company when they built the Grumman cats, from the Hellcat to the Tomcat to the Tiger, okay, to the Panther. They named all their supersonic jets and other flying aircraft under cats, and that was what they were known for. They won the contract to build the lunar module, which was kind of a surprise because McDonnell had built the Mercury and Gemini capsule, okay, but and then Rockwell, North American, I mean, got the contract for the lunar, the command module, and yeah, I probably ignore the command module more than I should, Marty. We'll have to maybe feature that next year during Apollo because I don't have a command module engineer here like you, so of course I'm biased. Lunar module went through a bunch of generational looks and views in its from 1962 on the left to 1968 here on the right. A lot of it was to save weight. The windows were a big factor. If you listen to Bert Dick, he had an excellent talk, didn't he, Marty? Particularly on the major decision to take seats out of the vehicle on the far left and maybe the one on the right, and have the astronauts stand up. And that way they were closer to the window, because when they were sitting down, they wanted windows below them, kind of at their feet and ahead of them, so they could see the lunar surface real well. The astronauts are standing up. They're tethered to the floor with a cable, okay? There's a crash bar in the middle of it. We're going to see that here in the middle. And the only vehicle ever built to be made to work in the vacuum of space, land on another world and take off from another world, not designed to re-enter the Earth, and designed for the operators to be standing up. No chairs in the thing, not even a lawn chair, right, Marty? That'd have been cool to take a lawn chair to the moon and just sit on it outside for a while. We have this in our museum, a replica of it. We're so proud of it. It has some damage to it, but it's probably worth $15,000-$20,000. Yes, Marty, go ahead.
The LEM was also the first crewed vehicle to fly variable speed engines.
To fly with what?
Variable speed, thrustable.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm pronouncing that right, thrustable.
Great, there you go. Yes, and hypergolic fuels. Just an amazing concept 55 years ago. There's the separation. When they're connected for the long 3-day journey to the moon, I say this doesn't look very Star Wars or Star Trek-y, because it doesn't. It's just a basic container to keep humans alive. The only part that comes back is the triangular cylinder there. Of course, the command module and the base of the lunar modules left on the moon. We'll see photos of that. And then they usually crash the Ascent stage into the moon, so it'd be out of the way. But Apollo 10 is circling the moon. He's circling the sun, actually. There's the lunar module in Earth orbit. Okay, Apollo 9. You see the ladder at the top going down. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there's the inside of the lunar module. A very publicized photo, but I don't like it because it doesn't have the computer right here in it. Which you should have the DSKY, Desky computer in there. It looks like a big adding machine that had big numbers and verb, noun. It was how the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology brainiacs that built it. 64K of memory, about only 20 of that K was RAM, that was random access memory they could change. So they're there standing up, and right down there in the bottom is the hatch that was opened up. It swung open towards me, so the pilot was blocked. He would have to step over it. And that was one of the reasons why Neil Armstrong went out first. But the other reason was he was the commander. Buzz thought he was going to get to go out first because on all the spacewalks, the pilots in the right-hand seat did the spacewalks and the commanders stayed in there. But there was some, I think really one of the big reasons, Marty, was, how about you, is that Neil was a civilian, technically. Though he worked for the Air Force X-15 thing, he was technically a civilian. And Buzz was a Marine, wasn't he?
No, it was,
Oh, he's,
I think it was Air Force.
yeah.
I think part of the reason also was Neil was more conservative. He didn't have the ego that Buzz had.
Absolutely. And of course, 55 years, there's thousands of books and comments and articles about this. Neil Armstrong was the right man at the right time, always. He was very humble about everything. And I encourage you to watch the movie First Man with actor Ryan Gosling in it. And the woman who plays his wife is very good. I keep forgetting her name. She was in a movie, The Woman with the Dragon Tattoo or something like that. But it's like a Hallmark movie, I say, because it engages the kids. They take some liberties with the space shot itself, but you do see the flag on the moon, and I think it's just well done. But you see why Neil Armstrong was so quiet, introvert. Something very tragically happened to him and his wife early in their marriage, and that plays out in this lunar walk and the whole theme. But also he saw 4 of his X-15 friends die in that program, and then of course his best friend Ed White dying. So yeah, Marty. Claire Foy. Thank you, Claire Foy. I think she's an Academy Award winning actress. Claire Foy, Ryan Gosling. That's a much more accurate movie than Fly Me to the Moon, for sure. Anything would be, right, Marty? Actually, the Sesame Street version of the lunar landings probably, put the Cookie Monster on there and Grover, and it wouldn't be any different. All right, so I always like it. We've had the Grummies on here live over different eras, the last 4 years of Stay Curious, but this is the lunar module with the skin off. Is this be a Beth Page? Yeah, that'd be a Beth Page in there. You notice the tank there's for hypergolics, and there's a small tank right up above it. And Marty's going to explain some of this stuff in there. And there they are at the operations and checkout building called the ONC. That's now the Neil Armstrong building. This is where the ships were mated, also where the astronauts on the floor or 2 above them stayed. They would come down and check out the work. Here you see 2 lunar modules in process. You see some of that gold foil. That's called Kapton foil. And the black areas are called Inconel. And I don't see too much of the gold yellow, which is the mylar, but we'll see some of that. And I love this picture because, Marty, you want to point out a few things? If you would, sir. Cue the mic.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you want to see. That's the S-band antenna. That's the rendezvous radar antenna. That was on the same time the landing radar was on when they were descending onto the moon. That's what caused the 1201, 1202 alarms. Only the landing radar should have been on. In subsequent missions, software was updated to have them both on. Back here, this is the F bay. That's a vast majority of all the electronics were mounted. It all mounted to, we call cold rails. They had water glycol going through that, keeping the electronics cool. And you mentioned a tank. And I can't see much else.
Show them the oxygen tank. This is where all the breathable oxygen was. Logan, have I got my smart tablet over there? I meant to bring it in, but thank you. I was going to get your comments and stuff on there. Look how small that is compared to the hypergolic fuel tank there on the right with one of those nasty tetrahydroxyzines or whatever they are. But it's only bigger than a beach ball. And yet it was so compressed, the oxygen there. That was the breathable oxygen for the astronauts in the cabin, as well as what they loaded into their spacesuits. And it didn't get much bigger on the 3-day missions, did it, Marty?
No, it didn't. But Mark, these are the RCS jets. There's 4 in each corner of the vehicle, what we would call in quads. and that's what gave you your pitch and roll.
Terrific. All right, thanks, Marty. And the skin they put over it was the thickness of 3 sheets of aluminum foil, right, Marty? Not even the heavy duty stuff.
No, if you're talking about the Mylar and the Inconel,
Pardon me?
are you talking about the?
Well, basically, when they cover it up with the skin, there's nothing that's a thickness. Yeah.
Well, the Mylar was 20 layers. There's 20 layers of Mylar, and on top of that, a lot of times you had your Inconel, and you also had the what do you call it? Kapton.
Kapton, okay.
But the inside structure, that was chemically, to save weight, that was chemically milled down to about 0.06 mil. It was a 0.06 mil.
Okay. Thank you, Marty. Let's mention here our volume might be a little low. Check that, Logan, on there. But now I see all of our good friends. Doug Forrest says hello from Los Angeles. Tom Colbert. Hello, Tom from Ireland. Hope you're enjoying this. William Whiting says happy Friday. Get well soon, Karan. And we miss William's happy smiling face on the Space Coast. Carlton Bailey sends his prayers to Karan, and he's howdy to all of our minions, Connie and Anita, and the rest of the staff. Mark Usiak, happy Friday to you. I sure am glad it's Friday. We've got Mad Astro Gamer. Hello there. We're glad that you joined us today. And Tommy Usiak, hope that you're feeling better. He said he's going to go see the movie this weekend with his friends. His brother and the other photography buddies of his, and I said, I hope no one's in the theater, so you can just laugh and make comments all you want. But I'll be calling you Monday about your review of that, Tommy. Remember I said fun and far-fetched. Steve Jokums, great to see you. Thank you for your prayers for Karen, Steve, from Fox Lake, Illinois. Carlton Bailey says he has a C90 cassette tape he used to record the first Moonwalk. I need to listen to stereo microphones in front of the TV speaker and record it live. Still plays today. And Steve Jokum says a few of us did that. I had no cassette tape. I made a film of it that I needed to look at. Tom Celentano knew Claire Foy, was in that movie First Man. I really enjoyed it. And so thank you all for watching today. And we know that Hazel Banks is probably watching. Hazel knew these astronauts as their secretary. She's been on before and just talked about what pride they had. And it represented everyone from herself as a secretary up to the astronauts doing what it took to get the job done. So, all right, there's a sawing it in half. The left side's where the windows are. The right side's where the Ascent engine is there, Marty, right? Yeah. Sticking up there. Like I said, if you had a Volkswagen bus or ever been in one, it's like that engine hump in there between you there. And Marty says that he rested on there a few times, waiting for people to come to check your workout.
A lot of times.
A lot of times? All right, I didn't want to be... So to think that you actually sat on that, and this is great. Yeah, go ahead.
That one was square, but the engine cover is actually round.
Okay, so again, a little inaccuracy there. I think that's at the Smithsonian. There you see the legs folded up to go into the slaw. And just doesn't look like we see it on the moon. And when you see it up close, particularly the Lunar Module 9 out at the Space Center, you're going like, wow, they didn't worry about the aesthetics of it, how it looked, like building a car or a Jeep or something like that. There's some really ragged areas to it. This is the Russian Lunar Module, LM-1, which over here's the hatch of the window that the one cosmonaut was going to go down in, 2 hours to orbit the moon. The other cosmonaut was going to come around, and this cosmonaut was going to land on the moon, grab up some rocks and pictures, get back in, and launch off in time to catch that cosmonaut on that first orbit. Of course, if he didn't, he'd have another orbit. But very simple, crude about as big as a couple. Well, if you know the, um, I'm thinking of a telephone booth. Not many of you know what a telephone booth. Do you know what a telephone booth is, Logan? You don't?
No, I do.
Oh, have you been in one?
Once.
Okay. And what's the Doctor Who's what I'm thinking of? Doctor
TARDIS.
Who.
TARDIS.
TARDIS is the telephone booth. Okay. Thank you for that. Anyway, there is lunar module number 9 when it was hanging up in the above the rafters there next to the Saturn V. They took it down a few years ago, redid it, and boy, does it look great. And thank you for changing our green screen to that, Logan. It really looks cool. You see an astronaut saluting the flag. I love that the light on it's kind of low because it kind of adds mystery to it. There's Marty. Believe he's talking to Hazel, Connie McDaniel there when Anita, Hazel, and I went out there with Marty. And you want a tour of this thing, you're going to want to tip Marty $50 for what he tells you about all this. It is just amazing that when you see it up close and have somebody that actually had his hands on it. And there's the hatch that they came out of. Marty, the round above the hatch, is that a sighting scope of some sort or a star tracker? Or
No, it's actually a flashing light that the command module can track the lunar module visually. It's
the
a strobe
black with the white around it?
Let me point to. Hang on.
Yeah.
You talk. Whoops. Dang. You talking about that right there, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That was a light, huh?
It's a strobe light. Yeah.
Strobe light. Wow. What's the red thing right up above? It looks like covered with Kapton, but at the very top. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that is.
But there's the hatch. More complicated than you think. Well, I'm sure Marty doesn't know why they've got the half circles there on either side of the hatch.
Yeah, he does.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was me. Let me turn Sarah off. That's where the handle is inside the lunar module. Let me get the arrow back.
All right. Now, one thing we love talking about the ladder. You see, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's inside the cabin itself. That's where the handle is. So I'm assuming they just want to keep that from freezing over, so it has some thermal protection.
Oh, thermal protection for the hatch so it doesn't freeze over.
And that would
Okay.
be the hinge, one of the hinges on the other side.
And a hinge on the other side. Wow. Okay. That's well thought through. Really, that's the things that you think about. Wow. They decided to insulate the handle that opens on the inside in case the 200 below zero side would keep it frozen by some moisture or something inside of it from the cabin, like human, right, Marty?
Yes.
Like exhaust. Brilliant. Who would have thought of that?
Oh, you would have, Mark.
No, I wouldn't have. You know, remember Tom Jones said that he and another lady astronaut were ready to go for an EVA and they couldn't get the door open. And could you imagine going through all that training and a simple little screw was caught between the latch and they couldn't open it? So there you go. The ladder. Marty, did you ever scurry up and down that ladder?
Nope, afraid not.
Tell us why.
It just would not support my weight. At 150 pounds, I'd crush it. It's obviously designed for a 1/6 gravity.
1/6 gravity or about 30 pounds there. And when you see these things, you got to think of that. These things, I'm surprised it could stand up under its own weight on Earth, Marty.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the one at the visitor center, it's not standing on its own legs. It's being propped up.
Okay. Dave Stange was talking about 3/4 of a mil is less thickness than the clear coat on your vehicle today, which is around 2 mils. So on there. So yeah, everything was thin. We've talked about an acid bath that some of the materials went through to strip off molecules for the weight. But this is the front. And of course, everybody knows that the bottom section stays on the ground. You see a lot of Kapton foil. All right. And the gold is the Mylar. You don't see Kapton foil for sale very often, but you do see the Mylar. And Marty's got some for sale. And then the dark areas are Inconel. All right. Now, when you look at the back, I was kind of amazed to look at this up close and see in the center is the engine bell. Thank you, Marty. That is the bell of the Ascent engine, the exhaust bell. And that's a gap opening in the back for the exhaust to come out. All right. And one of our expert modelers, Steve Jokums, of his Lake County Spaceport Modeling Decal Company. I don't know if I've seen models that have it correctly like this, Steve, where they have the Ascent stage visible, and that's exhaust, which makes sense because, well, you tell me the physics and stuff behind it, Marty.
Well, obviously you need a what do you call it, like glass trench like you have on the Earth on a launch pad. You have to have the exhaust going somewhere. There's Mylar just below the engine bell, so it's using that as a launch pad. And then obviously the exhaust, if you will, has to go somewhere. So
yeah.
And what actually happened is after the liftoff on the moon, this is the skin over the electronic bay, the aft bay, and that would actually start peeling up.
Yes.
Didn't have an adverse effect on the
excellent
mission.
When we talk about one of the other Apollo missions, I'll put this, and yes, you see like Apollo 16 very noticeably. There's a whole lot of is it Mylar you said, or Kapton that's flaked up, and you're going like, oh wow, that doesn't look too good. But it was just an artifact of the stuff going in there. And I mean, look, you see these little tape places all over the place and stuff like that. It is just so cool to see this with your own eyes.
Well, back up one picture.
Sure.
Okay.
You want that picture, Marty?
Yeah. If you read Chariots of Apollo, we find out, we read where several of us on the launch team put our names on a piece of Mylar and taped it to the descent stage. This is where our names are.
Inside that box.
On top of it.
Oh, on top of it.
Yeah.
Oh. So Marty's name is on the moon at Mare Tranquility.
Just don't tell anybody.
With Bill Waldron and Bill's got that great story where he caught the guy that was doing it because he knew he was up to something, and Bill, they did it legally with all of the weight and the right materials, but Bill was mad because they didn't ask him to put his name on it, and he was the chief of the project.
Except it wasn't legal, Mark.
Yeah, it was illegal.
We stuck it on there,
Yeah.
but it was all flight equipment, flight ink and flight Mylar.
I wish they'd taken a picture of that on the moon. I really do. That would be something. So I forgot about that, my friend. How cool is that? Marty's on the moon.
Yeah, I wish we'd taken a picture of it before we put it on.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's no record of it, huh? Very good. I wonder where that was. Well, there's the exhaust bell sticking out of the exhaust port. There's Marty talking. They have a display that's behind glass that you look through there and you see how cramped it is, and it's a pretty good reconstruction. I wish you could get to it a little bit more, but where you see it right there, this was the back of it where they had the spacesuits and all that stuff, right, Marty?
That's where the engine cover was.
Wow. Steve Jokum says, on top of the mesa, how cool. Yes, and Neil Armstrong on the transmission you're going to listen to, Steve, during the moonwalk, he definitely goes, what's this? He didn't say, what's this? He goes,
He just said, what?
he says, what?
What?
Yeah, he goes, what?
He didn't finish.
Yeah, when he saw it, he goes, what? Go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, he didn't finish the whole word what. It was just like, what? And he knew enough not to say anything.
Yeah. As he saw it, and it was like, you made it or something. Is that what you guys wrote on it? You made it, or
congratulations from, I think it's the Grumman launch team.
Yeah. Of course, who knows what other people stuck their signatures somewhere else on there.
Oh, they were sticking pictures and names down the strut of the landing legs. That was the main place to put it. Because that was the least dangerous.
Well, we burned up 45 minutes here, and I don't like to rattle on that much. Yeah, right. But everyone's saying. But we've got a lot of good pictures we're going to show you here. As we can't talk enough about landing on the moon. This is what our American Space Museum's all about, the heritage of that, and then continuing on with the shuttle era. There's an artist conception. Artists usually at this time made the moon mountains sharp, like the Rocky Mountains, and they're more subdued and covered with micrometeorite dust that pounded them for millions of years. So they're soft, and like the Appalachian Mountains. But at least they've got clouds on the Earth, because you'll see many science fiction movies that do not have clouds on the Earth. And oh, by the way, the moon directions in that movie, Fly Me to the Moon, when they showed the moon in the sky and so forth, they have it so screwed up. They have it upside down and left to right. But what I want to talk about is how we get to this stage here. Marty, talk a little bit more about the pyrotechnics, that over 200 things have to explode, separate, pipes cut, wires cut. About 200, right, Marty? Within a fraction of a second. Go ahead, my friend.
It was over 240. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's 240 plus.
But the one that fascinates me the most is the guillotine. Why don't you share that a little bit with us? There's a picture of the guillotine.
Well, the guillotine was obviously used, I shouldn't say obviously, I'm sorry. It was used to separate or cut the cables and piping between the ascent and descent stage. And it was like two blades just basically crossing over each other. It's kind of, it was redundant. If one blade didn't cut, the other one would. And they both should have cut.
Now, Marty, not just your bad dream, but a lot of people's bad dream was the same bad dream that you had about the shuttle. Tell us what was your only apprehension as a Grumman technical man.
Over the years that I spoke to other people, and they had very similar dreams. Mine was that the umbilical did not work. And so it started lifting, the ascent stage lifting up, and it just kind of falls over to the side because the cables were keeping it from separating. And other people would say one of the joints and the nut and bolts on one of the quadrants didn't blow. And they had a similar type dream where the ascent stage is flipping over on its side.
Worked perfectly 6 times, though. We love it. Actually, 7 times, 8 times. Well, it worked 9 times, because it counted Lunar, Apollo 9 and 10, and it had to work on 13. So there's what it looked like from, I think, Apollo 15's rover camera that they kept on live. Of course, you're not going to see flames out from under it. There's no oxygen. So way cool. And that's the back side of it too there. So you're seeing the flame side of it there. Famous snap from the movie that was taken up there, showing you the flag probably laid down. Wanted to mention that not all of the lunar modules landed completely upright. In fact, I think all 6 of them escaped within a few feet of a crater that could have compromised them more. This was Apollo 15, I believe, that Jim Irwin said he had trouble sleeping because of the incline was so bad there, but it didn't compromise the liftoff. Did compromise getting the lunar rover out of there, though, didn't it, Marty? A little bit. There's a lunar mound valley that they're in a higher place above the limb there. The Grumman technical people that so proudly put this together for 50 years celebrated this here on the coast, Marty, and it was beautiful to be part of that. There's Scott McLeod, his token that Grumman gave their employees. Marty, you have one of those given to you for your excellent performance. This is a special award given. Go ahead, sir.
I wouldn't say they gave it to employees. They did give it to some NASA people also. But I don't know the number, but there were not a whole lot of them.
And they're worth $1,000 or more anytime you see one for sale, so snag it up there. And Dave Stange, yes, the LEM had to separate from Apollo 13. They did do that, didn't they, Marty? Yeah. They did. They had to use that engine for the descent engine to get them back to Earth, and then they had to separate it to get. Well, did they? I'm sure they did, Marty. What do you think?
Yeah, as far as I know, they did. I couldn't tell you just when in flight.
And yeah, Marty, Dave, they were talking about on the Mesa is where that was that the astronauts saw, and Neil Armstrong caught himself in mid-word because he didn't want to give away what he was looking at and get people in trouble. There's the panorama all around the landing area there. Isn't that cool? Neil's shadow, Buzz is at the back of there, Neil is gone about the farthest that he walked away. So if you're looking at this in some sort of a landscape, how far away was he from the lunar module there? So we're going to share that with you here in a minute. The big moon will be full over the weekend. We call it the buck moon, okay? The buck moon is a Native American name because the bucks were kind of rambunctious and looking for those females out there. And so they'd be fighting for each other with their horns clacking and all that. That's where we get that. So here, when you look at the full moon or any kind of moon, there are the landing sites, the 6 landing sites. You see the first 3 were along the equator, all right? Then boldly, because of less fuel, less navigation, you see Apollo 11. You look over here at the right of the moon, you see the oval is the Sea of Crisis, MarQ. The Sea of Tranquility is right beside it, and there's where Apollo 11 is on the western shore, the Sea of Tranquility. Above it is the Sea of Serenity, where Apollo 17 landed on one side and 15 on the other. And this sea here is called Fecunditatis, and this is the Sea of Nectar right there, all right? These sites were chosen for their scientific interest. Again, there they are. This is what the moon looked like on the 16th, okay, when of July, 16th of July, when the launch was. They couldn't see the landing site, and you can barely see the oval of MarQ. All right, actually, it's down there, and there is the oval of MarQ, and this is the terminator over Mare Serenity, where they landed on there. So there wasn't much moon to see in the sky, and it actually set, just a few hours after sunset. Well, here's another picture showing you the area to look for. Again, MarQ, the oval at the top. That's what drove me nuts, was they were going to have it at the bottom left and left to right, and oh my God, they had the moon screwed up in that movie. But there's the landing site on the inset on the left, and there's 3 craters that were named after the astronauts. Now, you amateur astronomers know. Can you take my name off at the bottom there? This is called Moltke, Moltke. I think if I go smaller, you see. Yeah, Moltke's at the bottom there. You can see that through a backyard telescope, not even a very big one. And then you see where the X marks the spot of the landing. And Aldrin, Collins, and Armstrong had craters named after them that didn't have names before. You can also see Ritter and Sabine very easily in a backyard telescope, obviously. So forward there is the Apollo lunar. It's the lunar module. Let me get this straight. It is we have an orbiter orbiting the moon, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO. There's this photograph of the lunar module descent stage. You see where the camera is. A PPPS is there. All right. The LRR is the reflecting mirror that they put up there. And you see the dark trail that Neil Armstrong walked over here to this crater, West Crater, and that he had to avoid. He drove over that crater. That's the crater you see that he flew over to land where he landed. Very dramatic. He had plenty of fuel, though it was within 30 seconds. He was a test pilot. That's plenty of time. He could have gone to the restroom and back and still landed the thing probably. But here is matching the pictures with the image of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, the astronaut trail. Part of the story of First Man is what Neil threw into that crater, if anything. So you're looking at this area here of the drama of the 2-hour moonwalk, and you're going to relive it tomorrow night starting about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. All right, so on that Apollo 11 Live. But the whole area that you're looking at, where they walked out in this little mopped area there, how much area would that cover, Logan? What do you think? Is that let me just give it away. It's the area of a basketball court, not even a football stadium, all right? They only went about 180 feet away, All right. So here at the Orlando Magic basketball game tip-off there, if the lunar module was over here behind where I'm at, where Neil walked over to that west crater would just be over in the stands on the far left over there. That's all the further that he would have walked.
Point with the other hand.
Pardon me?
Point with the other hand.
Oh, point with the other hand. Yeah. Yeah, Neil walked from here. The lunar lander is where my head is, and the furthest he walked was up there, about 10 rows up into the stands up there. Okay, so I think that's interesting to think about, that's where the whole drama of the moonwalk unfolded before your eyes. Right there is like you're watching a basketball game, not even a football field. It's half of a football field. There's the famous steps down the ladder, broadcast on TV. Watch the movie Dish over the weekend. Enjoy the movie Dish. It's during a storm in Australia when in Canberra area, I forget where exactly. Cliff Watson, you tell me where it's at, mate. I know you're having a Saturday morning breakfast. And Steve Jokums thinks Apollo 13's limb was left intact as it docked. So that's pretty cool. Dave Stange said he's seen the moonwalk overlaid on a baseball infield. Again, the same thing on there. So we'll look into that Apollo 13 and let you know about that. That'll be a good one to bring up on a future Stay Curious. There's the enhanced version of it with today's technology. But I'll never forget this. When we saw it going, first it was upside down, and then they corrected it. And then he said, that's one small step for him. He goes, I'm going to step off the pad now. And Marty, where were you watching it?
I was home. I think I was home. I don't really remember, but either I saw the reruns of it because I may have been working because I always worked the night shifts. So I probably just saw the reruns. So I was probably at work.
Well, as we end this, I saw it on Hurd Avenue. And actually, no, I didn't see it on Hurd Avenue. I saw it on, anyway, wherever I saw it, I know where the house was. And I made this sketch. Don't consider myself a true artist. I do like to sketch a little bit and can see something and put it halfway decent on paper there. So I made this sketch as a 15-year-old young man from the surface of the moon. I was so impressed with that. And over the years, I've made my own sketches of the moon. Okay, and thoroughly enjoy that. Looking at it's so fascinating. You're looking at a Carpathian mountain range here, and the shadows of those mountain peaks will change and get shorter as I sit there and make this sketch. So it's something that you kind of got to do quickly because the moon's ever changing. And there's another sketch of Plato and the mountain peaks that are on the edge there that you don't see. 4:30 a.m. I made that sketch, it says there. And I have the landing sites, but of course I couldn't find the Apollo 11 landing site. But I'll probably do that for you Monday. So, of course, our Space View Park is unparalleled anywhere in the world. It is truly like a Taj Mahal, a Roman Colosseum, and Eiffel Tower. It really is, folks. The only place you can go out and put your handprints on the great Neil Armstrong right there, as well as our museum. We've got copies of it. President Kennedy in the background. Apollo workers like Marty say we never would have done it in 1969 if President Kennedy had not been assassinated. And his pledge to do that was to honor him and his legacy. And we not only did it, we would have done it, but maybe in 1970 or 71, hopefully still beating the Russians. But, you know, we did it in July, Mr. President, and then we doubled down in the month of May and did it again. And just how cool is that? So, with Apollo 12. So, hope everybody, yeah, Marty?
Not May.
I November. What I say? I'm kind of this. I'm right. We did it in July, and then we did it in November of 1969 before the year ended, and we did it during the horrible Vietnam War and the billions and billions spent on that, and then of course the civil rights movement going full bore in our country in 1968 and 69. It was truly an amazing couple of years for whether you were a teenage boy like me or a man like Marty working on the lunar module going to the moon, or any of you out there that remember that period. It certainly was highlighted by the moon landing there. So, well, thank you all for watching today. Once again, you go want to have some fun and see a far-fetched movie. That's my endorsement there. All right. Logan, thank you so much for a great Streamlabs job today. And Tom Celentano said, my mother said at the time that he must be the man of steel. And absolutely. So we hope that everybody's enjoyed our programs this week. We've had 2 great weeks of programming for y'all. Tell your friends that on Stay Curious on YouTube is the only place that you can get live interviews with astronauts, live interviews with space workers. In fact, I mentioned astronaut because Monday we're going to have Winston Scott, friend of our museum. Winston's going to be in the building talking to about 30 high school students from Japan, and I've asked him to come on about 3:45 or so. We'll probably have an early program, so I'll be telling everybody look for us around 3:30 as we get Winston in here, sit down like he did before when the Japan's Florida group was here, and give us a little update about what he's doing, his thoughts on the Boeing Starliner, some of the events going around, and get his opinion of that movie. From that he was at. He was one of the astronauts that was at it, and I hadn't talked to Winston about it, but we'll see his take on the movie Fly Me to the Moon there. So, all right. And Wednesday, yes, I got another important interview. Wednesday, we're going to talk to the CEO of OneWeb. Okay. Jim, I knew I'd forget Jim's name and should have Jim Hines, I think is his name. The chief operating officer, not operating officer, chief CEO, executive officer of this company, OneWeb, that's also putting constellations of stars and constellations of satellites in space among the stars. Hope you enjoyed my debut of my new shirt here. Merch, MERCH something is one of the places that does all these kind of special shirts. And so I gave them a plug. Hope you like it and check them out. Want to just make sure that Neil 1030 knows we appreciate him. We had Mad Astro Gamer on there first time. Thank you. And we thank everybody for staying curious with me, Mark Marquette. Until next time, I'm saying that I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us. And go watch Apollo Real Time. The landing will be hot and heavy at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Thank you so much.